Cincinnati, just kind of what you saw from your defense?
Yeah, I think probably up and down. I mean, the possessions, at the end of the game, we're positive, finding ways to get stops late, which is critical. Trying to give yourself a shot in I guess it was a two-score ball game, something like that, not for the whole duration of it. But so really proud of that. I mean, I keep talking about fight and unfortunately maybe a little bit of a broken record a week later. But the fight matters, and the second you don't think it does, then you're going to miss some opportunities to go through this. And the shared experiences as we go through this thing defensively and new staff, new team, new guys, all the things, first year. And so going through it right now. But and then the chief thing to circle, again, positive, getting stops late and find a way to give football program a chance. There was some not a lot of points scored in the fourth quarter, but no takeaways. I mean, you gotta unfortunately continue to circle back to that, and it matters. And we got to find a way to get a hand on the football, and it's a momentum play. Those are game changers, and we haven't gotten those recently, and there's a reason we've been on the wrong side of things because of it.
When you have a busted coverage like you did early, do you address it at all in the moment, or do you just move on?
Yeah, you do. I mean, I think the number one thing that you do is you say, okay, well, number one, why did it happen? And did we make that play on Wednesday of practice? The answer is yes. In this exact same scenario, and say, okay, well, what creates the confusion? And number one, you got to make sure that it beyond that, it doesn't turn into an epidemic. And is there a communication piece that you can do? Is it something that you're asking a guy to do that he hasn't done a lot of? From a coaching standpoint, kind of falls in the category of simple, not easy. Do we have enough cumulative reps to put a guy in the situation to ultimately make a play, not just be in the right place, but make a play. But no, you absolutely address it, and the positive, that's not been an issue, but it's not a percentage position as you talk about the back end in general, corners, safeties, backers who are involved in coverage. And unfortunately, we had a couple the other day. And so part of the messaging on that is, communicate. Well, Coach, I knew what my job was. Okay, well, making sure the guys around you, have an understanding and what one word can do. It can put your mind at ease. It can put someone else's mind at ease. It could save the day. Sometimes the life you save is your own. You kind of remind yourself of something in the moment. And part of the messaging on that too is if a teammate doesn't know his job descriptor and a communication that I could help him with, then I negate my ability to make a play. Because we're about to sack the quarterback. Oh, by the way, And so if one word could help us in those scenarios, and so in any event, there's a lot of plays in the game, but those ones are just they're fatals. Literally fatals from the standpoint you just hand the team 7 points.
Both you and Coach Frost talked about the team's fight, especially on defense. Late in the game, down by 9, the offense really doesn't have an opportunity to get back into the game, but the defense still forces a stop and gets the offense back on the field. That's got to be encouraging about the team's mentality and that we're all in.
Well, it is, and you don't always get the outcome that you desire, that the other team is conspiring against you on a week-in and walk-out basis. They get a vote in terms of how Saturdays go, and you're obviously fighting and clawing to make sure that you give yourself that same shot. And there's moments over the course of the game, not just late, that have a cumulative impact on what the score is and how the things go. But you've seen it just like I've seen it. The alternate reality when guys don't keep fighting, and then all of a sudden you do score a touchdown, or you score a couple late, and oh, by the way, if we would have gotten stops, those would have mattered a lot more. But you gave in, and so it does matter. And there's that's not a loser's mentality, and that's not an oh, by the way, let's find a positive as we search through this, as we struggled as of late. No, that's a big deal, and you got to believe that the tide will turn because of that.
I asked Nigel about this yesterday. John Walker's role might not necessarily lend itself to counting stats, but when you look at the tape, how do you evaluate how he's performing and his return from injury and what kind of value he brings to your scheme?
Yeah, I think interior defensive linemen can have a huge impact, and I think to your point, not always on the stat sheet. It's they don't get the tackle, but they actually make the play because of the things that they do. And I think there's certainly some examples of that with our interior guys. I think that also the messaging for the entirety of the defensive front, we got to find ways to make more negative plays, and some of that's calls. So it's not just them; it's coaches and everything else. How can we find a way to get offenses behind the sticks, no, I've been pleased with John, and I think it's like to your point, it's 6 games in, and you're playing whatever 40 snaps a game and stuff like that. I just think it'll continue to build that way, and the cumulative impact of Saturdays, and every week's a different challenge and different offenses. But now you've been in it more, and recognizing too that whether it's a pass numbers or run numbers in terms of what you're seeing from a particular offense. Some days the stat count is just literally predicated because they didn't throw the ball very much, or they ran it outside, and some of those things. So those are things you can't control, but works hard on a day in and day out basis, and I think there's more production out there for him, and I think it'll come.
Coach, what have you seen from the game tape going up against West Virginia this weekend, going up against the Rich Rodriguez-led offense?
Yeah, it's just very multiple. The ability to create an explosive. You see the impact of the defenses that have been able to prevent them, and probably like a lot of offenses, but some more than others. Where if you can control the explosive, makes it very difficult to sustain drives and everything else. And so, but there's a healthy respect on our end as we watch the tape, how quickly, it may be short gain, small gain, and then the home run. And so, and they do it by a number of different ways. Most specifically, when you're talking about the motions and jet series that he's been so good at over the years, and misdirection, and then it's off of that, and then there's a pass off of that. And so, eye control is critical, discipline is critical. We talked about communication on the back end and stuff. So, it's one of those type of offenses. One word probably isn't enough communication, because now you got to be, okay, well, but when this happens, we got to say this, and some of those things. So really test you defensively that way.
They're coming off a bye week. Do you always kind of expect big changes, especially that's a team in a similar situation? UCF, a rebuilding year. They're trying to get some momentum in Big 12 play. Do you kind of expect the unexpected, especially when the team has much more time to prepare for you?
You do. I mean, it's kind of like what hole do you drill down, and how far do you drill? What does that mean? How do they use that time? Obviously from a personnel standpoint, played several quarterbacks. Okay, does that sort itself out by the time we see him, or are we going to see a combination of several guys in that? And so you do have an expectation that there's a good chance what we see, especially early in the game, probably won't be exactly what we've watched on tape. And so from that standpoint, it goes back to you got to trust your rules, you got to trust your communication, and it's kind of the not so fun pieces as you go through it, but the monotony of communicating and trusting your eyes and everything else, and then in the end being knocked down pieces on the back end, and you don't want to say survive the down, but if it gets real fancy, we got to survive the down, move on. And it's not a game of first downs; it's a game of touchdowns, and so it can't be overly emotional if it's a 10-yard gain early in the game.
Yesterday, Nigel Leake said that if the offense scores 10, we've got to hold them to 9. That seems like a lot of pressure and not a lot of margin for error. Is there a cumulative effect on the defense and knowing that they don't have many mistakes that they can even make?
Well, I'm number one. I'm glad he said it. I'm glad that those are his words, not mine. Although I would echo that. That's sport. There's times, and we joke about baseball in here. I know that it's 1-0. Well, guess what? That's the requirement of the pitcher on that particular. It's the same thing in basketball. They're hitting threes. Well, we got to respond a certain way. And so they be sometimes they're fall away threes, but we got to somehow equal that, and vice versa. And so our number one goal goal on a week-in-week basis is to hold the opponents to one less point than we scored. That's it. That's sport. Now everything else is, talking about the standards and stats, and they all matter. But there's one in particular that hits you over the face when you don't get it, and that's the win-loss column. And so I think you got an experienced guy that kind of gets that. I think my hope would be that is the voice of the football team, and most specifically in this case, the voice of the defense that truly means that. And it fires me up because that's something that you kind of preach, but at the same token, like you say, you don't put, all right, what's the number it's going to be on a particular weekend? Well, some weeks it's going to be that, and there's other weekends, as we know, that we're going to need those guys on their side to save our tail. So that's part of it. And then it's as much as we're siloed out in football and of all the sports we talk about, we kind of pretend like we're not on the same team. Sometimes it's a unit, and a unit is not offense and defense. I mean, the complete football team, and what's required is to do our part, and every game's different that way, and so we got to find a way to get stops, and there's a version of us that can get that done. I guess that would be my final kind of addition to Nigel League's quote is, well, that's really, really hard. Okay, we can do hard things. Like there's a version of us, and we got to get that version out of them.
3 weeks in a row in Big 12 played experienced quarterbacks that have been in the system with the school for multiple years. This week, playing in West Virginia, what goes into the thought process and kind of the planning of a game plan for somebody who doesn't have that level of experience, is a kind of new player in a new program and doesn't have the same level of tape as the other guys have seen?
Yeah, and I think, to your point in terms of the experience, I mean, that'd be a tremendous study across college football. I know from a defensive standpoint, it's something that we recognize. When you're seeing not just time in college, but most specifically in a scheme, at a place, there's just, those are things we used to talk about how important were, and now we kind of ignore it because it's not really available everywhere because people change. Well, there's a reason that was always a big deal all the time, right? The best part of a freshman was the famous quote, the best thing about a freshman is they turn into sophomores type of thing. Well, that's still the case. The best thing that happens to you is the cumulative impact over the course of time, and guys being with you in the development piece and all that stuff. And we don't talk about it enough because it's not always available to you. But I'd be fascinated I would just worry about the guys we play, but that was very real the last 3 weeks. And so when you have some guys that are inexperienced, you just recognize the fact that we don't know what we don't know, just maybe as much as they don't know what they don't know at this particular moment. And then sometimes that includes a willingness to drive the ball downfield into coverage. Well, you got to take advantage of when that happens, or you put them in a situation where they make a mistake, but you don't make them pay for it, and they can get real confident real quick. And in some cases, with young guys, I would say that would be the thing is maybe fears you or strikes fear in you the most defensively is for a young guy, sometimes it doesn't take much for them to get that confidence. They break a run, and all of a sudden it's they're starting to feel a certain way because they don't have as much experience that way. It might be the first explosive play they've had type of thing. So
is it tempting as a play caller to be more aggressive in those moments, or to kind of like maybe let them make a mistake in what you're
yeah, I think in theory, absolutely. And then I think that sometimes ties into, if you're not careful, then you have a lack of respect for the scheme and the 10 guys that are around them, and say, okay, well, let's attack this individual. Well, with the run game, the motion, the 53 and a third that they make you to defend, and you're talking about an experienced play caller and Coach Rodriguez. I mean, he understands the level of experience as quarterbacks too, and so he's as best he can is trying to put them in the best situation possible to be successful, and certainly at times over the course of a year has. And so there's that mix. I mean, it'd probably be a long answer, but taking your shots that way, but also have a respect for the other 10 and the deception piece of all that goes on to it.
Coach, you talked earlier about the plan of this team on the defensive side. Just what's the overall message leading up to the week to just kind of keep them playing the same way?
Yeah, I think a couple of different things. I think that number one, you never know when greatness is around the corner. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder and say, okay, this is the week. I think other messaging as you go through it is adversity is the sport, and you don't always get to decide when it comes, and you don't necessarily get to decide when it stops. But believe me, if you don't keep the pedal down and you don't take that additional step each week and keep fighting, you know what the outcome's going to be, and it ain't going to be good. And so part of the messaging to these guys, so here's my Friday night talk, is don't you want to find out if you keep fighting? Isn't there something that just wants to find out if we just swing one more time at this thing, what type of momentum we can create, and can we find a way to play our best ball game this Saturday? And that would be the final piece of it. There's a better version of us that we haven't seen yet. And again, it includes most specifically takeaways defensively. And the only way you do is put a good work week together. We had a good Tuesday, and so there's a lot of messaging going on. But fight would be at the top of it.
Coach, kind of on that note, broad question, midway point through the season, how do you evaluate your defense so far?
Really try hard not to, from a big picture standpoint, and it's just it's 1 week seasons, and it's more true now than ever. Like I said, we're going through some shared experiences now as you go through it. Every game has its unique challenges. We've been up, we've been pretty even over the course of a day. We've been down, and almost found a way to get a win, and other times didn't get enough stops to put ourselves in a situation that we could win the ball game. So we've been through some stuff now, and then again, in our previous life in coaching, it was okay to have some shared experiences and maybe go through some struggles, and now it's one of those deals where you got to experience everything in the off season, and we're just supposed to flip a switch and go win ball games. And so trying to evaluate it, I think again every play they score is not a good one, and we got to find a way to keep them out of the end zone. And I think big picture wise, again, the takeaway count is one right now that is a real frustrator. There's not a magic answer for it, otherwise we get it done. And then making sure that again that we be really frustrated right now if we weren't fighting and finishing football games. And so recognizing that and giving a lot of credit to the kids, again, gives you hope and gives you some confidence moving forward.
Good.
So, what's the focus been like in practice? You're coming out after a game where, if you hone in on the details, if you limit the penalties, line it up wrong, false starts, or whatever, you have an opportunity to be in that game. So, I know it's been kind of a recurring theme this season. How do you address that in the week of practice to limit those to make sure they don't happen again?
There's a lot of, encouraged while we're discouraged, not getting the results that we want the last couple of weeks. A lot of positive silver linings, but those don't always equate to winning football games. So we go back to practice. That's the only thing that we really can't control is how we practice, how we prep. And so yesterday, as we brought the guys in, just re-explain to them almost every drill that we have and what we're trying to get done, because I think that's what it comes down to. In the critical moment, not executing, I think that comes down to how we practice and where the intentionality is.
Where do you think you are after 6 games at quarterback? It seems like you're where you were coming out of camp, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of those things are, kind of what you expect going into the season. It's not always going to be windshield wiper clean in relationship to the health of each individual player, in particular quarterback. Obviously tough to be in a clean continuity at this point in the season, but I don't think we're a lot different than most teams. Some teams have had to play multiple guys. Where we're at right now is really wait and see to what the next couple of days look like for getting into this game. And no matter what guy we roll out there with, we need to be able to go execute. So it's not really something that we can spend a lot of time and dwell on because a lot of that stuff's really out of our control. But we'll try to do our best in practice to try to get the reps with each individual. At this point in the season, we're really talking about bank reps already built in, so we need to really hone in on those things and make sure we're highlighting our players with the plays that we call, the schemes that we design for each week, that there's carryover from previous weeks.
What did you see from Cam that you like most?
Hard not to say that was fun to watch that guy just play tough. I mean, he got hit a lot. A lot of it was because he was extending plays out, but he showed resiliency. He's a foxhole guy, and so that was good to see. Now we just need to be a little bit better of executing in the critical moment.
Kind of on that note, Coach Frost mentioned that this is the first time all the quarterbacks in the room are healthy since going into the Jacksonville State game. Now when it's a tough decision up ahead, what are you most looking for throughout this week of practice to say that this certain guy is going to be the starter, knowing that you've seen what they can do in a full game now?
Yeah, without being too cliche, it comes down to consistency, and it's not just how a guy throws the football. It's not just his timing. It's not just his feet. It's not just how he is in the huddle. It's not just how he carries himself in his prep. It's all those things combined, and so we need a little bit more time as we get through the week. And you mentioned availability, different than being 100% healthy, right? And at times you got to play hurt in football. This is a physical game. There's a certain level of toughness that's a prerequisite that comes in being a football player, which all the guys have. And Cam really put that he illustrated in a good way what it means to be on the top end of that, being extremely tough and critical in tough times. So we take all those things into account, and it's a wait and see game right now where we're at here sitting on Tuesday.
You guys had 12 drives this year, 10 plays or longer. As those drives go on, what's the challenge as a play caller to kind of keep them going and to not stall out and to finish the drives? What's that missing piece to make these things count?
Yeah, that's a great question about how to continue to keep long drives going. I mean, the easy answer is let's be explosive and let's score in less than 10 plays, which credit to the guys. One thing that was an encouragement was they executed the game plan in the sense that we needed to be able to put drives together and limit 3 and outs, which we have won in the game, and we look back on that, and that was really a third down conversion that we should have executed. But those long drives are good in the sense that we were able to control the clock and won the time of possession. That stuff's great. The one thing that we forgot to do was score touchdowns. Score points when it's most critical. It's hard to win a game when you're not scoring enough. When you're not scoring over 20 points. That's what they scored. We need to have one more than them. But in relationship to the question, how do you address that? Well, yeah, it's multi-layered. One, you'd like to have one play call that you kind of have in your pocket that's okay for sure based on the scheme that we're looking at. We feel really good about us being able to execute that and make an explosive happen, maybe score, but also that it comes down to the accountability of executing simple things at simple times, and that's where we're kind of inconsistent. And there's times where hey, we look great and we can put a 20-play drive together. Now let's finish.
Do you feel like there's a momentum or a mood swing at like when a drive like that finishes and you're punting it like the one drive in the third quarter stands out, 4th and 27, you're punting it after going 17 plays on it?
Yeah, it's usually just one mistake. Got 11 guys on the field. We'll all have to do our job, and it's simple. I know it's cliche, but we all have to just do our job. The penalties are generally the ones that have really hurt us. You don't get to 3rd and 27 without going backwards, and you just can't do that. So sometimes it's taking the simple and easy play, make the easy plays. The other thing is, there's a moment of just being poised in those situations, which we talked a lot about. And the encouraging thing is we're getting some of these young guys, some of these guys with youth and inexperience, they're getting the experience. So at some point, it has to click over. And we don't know when that's going to be. So we have to approach every day, practice every day of preparation and meetings with the expectation that it's right around the corner. So don't be surprised when it happens. And there's been minutes and moments of that during the season so far. We just have to make it more consistent. And that's all things. That's coaching, that's how we practice, that's getting the ball to the right person at the critical time. Next guy coming up because someone has to go to the sideline and get Gatorade or deal with something. We need more than just 11. It's a lot more than 11 just on offense, defense, and special teams. The expectation is next man up. And nobody's making any excuses. Everyone will look you in the eye and say, okay, this is where we got to be better, which is a cool thing, and that's encouraging.
Coach, yesterday Cam Kinney kind of spoke on Danny Hope's role, and he said that it was kind of like an angel of Clark in the room. I mean, how has Hope been for you guys, especially at this midway point?
Yeah, I haven't heard that, and that's really, really good analogy. Because of his relationship with Coach Clark and how close they were and their tight bond, you see a lot of the same things in relationship to how he carries himself, the coaching points, even the manner and cadence of which he speaks is similar. So, I could definitely see why Cam said that. And for us as a coaching staff, it's been really nice to have someone in the room that not only is Sean-like, but also he's brings a lot of, I don't know what the word is, but probably brings a lot of knowledge and is a good guy to lean on for the rest of the offensive staff.
I just want to follow that up because Coach Frost also said that West Virginia's staff sent letters in regards to Coach Mark, and I just didn't know if you had any if you knew about that or if what your thoughts were on that.
Pretty much everyone that I know in this profession and some people that I haven't got the chance to meet that had a relationship with Coach Clark have reached out. I think that just speaks volume to who he is as a person, who he was as a person, and the impact he had on a lot of people. And that's not just something that goes away. That's something that lasts a lifetime.
How good was it to have Dylan Wade back available? I know the previous week he wasn't maybe 100%, but it seemed like he was a little bit more healed up and made an impact.
Yeah, it was good to have him back. It helps the depth at the tight end position. That's probably the most important thing so that we're getting the appropriate amount of reps. But it's good to have one of your playmakers back, and I expect him to even be more involved and and more ready to play just because he's got another week and he had a game under his belt and he's still getting healthy, but he's looking a lot better and we're excited to have him back.
Coach, in the first half against Cincinnati, Cam Fancher had 139 total yards, the rest of the team just 16. Is it more of a point of emphasis to kind of spread the ball around with different players on offense, or is that just kind of a game flow type of game?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously going to be game flow and adjustments because they're going to get different looks in practice, but a lot of the reason why Cam had so much of the productivity had to do with the scheme we were dealing with, which is, a bend but don't break, and they did a good job executing their scheme. Hats off to Cincinnati. They have a good scheme, and they did a good job with that. Every week we're trying to spread the ball around, and that doesn't always mean run to pass ratio. That means getting the ball to the Z, to the X, to the F, to the T, to the Y, and obviously the quarterback. So that is something that we are mindful of, and we got to continue to make sure that happens.
Coach, piggybacking off of that, aside from Cam's rushing the backfield was a bit limited as far as production-wise against Cincinnati, just what were you witnessing, whether it was from the offensive line standpoint or from the backfield?
Yeah, I mean, to give you probably a more specific answer with what Cincinnati was doing with their scheme is, they, even though they were playing with a 3 deep shell, they were applying a lot of hats into the run fit, which lends an advantage in the RPO game, and we executed some, and we didn't execute the others. Bottom line is, we go back and look at it, it really didn't have anything to do with why we stuttered out. Those were the self-inflicted issues. As the penalties, it was the drop passes, the misalignment in a critical situation. So those are things that we could control, not necessarily Cincinnati. Hats off to them, but we just got to execute our stuff.
Back on the penalties, 9 false starts through the last 2 games. Is there a through line that explains that? That when you study the film and you look at it, that makes some sense of why it's happening? And how do you correct it? And you say go back to practice, but when you have that penalty over and over again, what do you do? What do you change?
You practice better, and I hate to give you an answer that's that simple, but that's what it is. When you fall start in practice, it's not a surprise that that's going to happen in the game.
Do you see it in practice?
Not as much as is in the game. So really that relates to the critical moment. So what do we do with practice? We try to create more intense moments in practice, and that's what we did a good job of today, and our guys handled it well. You get this point in the season, it can't be blood and guts for 3 hours of practice. If you do that, you're not going to be able to roll out with much of a football team on Saturdays. But there has to be moments in practice and periods in practice where we are getting, a shot of that. And for the most part, as coaches, we felt like that's been pretty good. And sometimes it's just a good and easy thing to do is just reframe practice, adjust a couple things with the periods so that you can highlight those things that we need to be in. Because it's not like it's always the same person. It's generally, why'd that happen? Okay, so we got to go back to practice. We got to practice cleaner and smoother. And that was one of our bullet points as an offensive staff. We need to be smooth. And at times we really were, and other times we resorted back to the way it looked the last couple of weeks. So again, how do you address that? We got practice better.
Coach, on a similar note to that, the team has struggled with penalties the past few weeks. You guys are taking the steps in practice, but what do you think isn't translating to on the field? I know we've mentioned poise before, but what else is possibly not clicking?
Yeah, I mean, without having a crystal ball and really to peel back layers into people's brains, I think it comes back to practice. I don't know. Yeah, that's what it comes back to. Listen, I certainly am not a witch doctor, and I don't know exactly why a guy does what he does in that critical moment. But if we look back to his preparation and try to find little inches where I can be better as a coach and the assistants can be better as a coach, that's where we're honing in on those things. And no one's panicked. That's the really cool thing about this group. No one's panicked. The belief is strong. The camaraderie is strong. When you go 3 weeks in a row without a win, that's when things get really hard. And tough people do tough stuff at tough times. So that's what we're working on right now.
It feels like a sense of urgency, though, to really clean it up going into the next week.
I would agree. We're always talking about having a sense of urgency, but it's highlighted. And at some point, it has to come from more than just the coaches. It has to come from the players. And I've definitely noticed that the last 48 hours.
With Cam's rushing total last week, a lot of it came on scrambling, a lot of them were off platforms type of stuff, and off script kind of stuff. When you go back and look at the tape, how much of that do you attribute to the receivers maybe not getting open downfield against Cincinnati, and then also with the offensive linemen trying to hold up in protection?
Yeah, I mean, I think sure that's part of it. I think when you got 8 guys in coverage, it's hard to get open. When you get down and it's late in the game, there's not a whole lot of passes for 3rd and 27 that are going to be really clean.
In the first half, though, there's a lot of his yards came in the first half.
Yeah, and we had a couple of huge plays down the field that came back. that hurts. I think it was over 400 yards of offense. Obviously, we had a lot of plays because you kind of end up in a 2-minute mode there at the end of the game, even though it's not 2-minute. So some of those might be a little bit padded. We're not crazy. We look at that as well. But the reality is the plays are there to be had. We have to make the plays. Sometimes it's the quarterback just missing a receiver by an inch. Sometimes it's the pass protection. It's not like we have free runners, so the scheme's good. It's just cleaning those things up. Hats off to Cincinnati again, but the reality is there's not a single thing that they did that we couldn't just executed our jobs. And that's stuff that we're resorting back to practice. Let's turn up the intensity in a period here and a period there and really recenter our focus. And like you said earlier, there's a sense of urgency to do that.
What stands out about West Virginia's defense?
Oh, the chaos. They're not going to line up the same 2 plays in a row. They're going to be a little bit of the opposite in relationship to what we saw last week in the sense that it's not a static 3 high, 8 guys in coverage defense. They will provide that look for us, but they're going to try and get after the quarterback. They're going to try and create some havoc in the run game and the pass game. So a whole different challenge. And I think as Coach Grinch mentioned to you guys earlier, you just never know when that opportunity is knocking. So we look at this as a great opportunity to turn up the sense of urgency, have a good Wednesday practice since we're done with Tuesday, and then really finish out the week.